Hello, my fellow Cardcaptor fans. Welcome to the first episode of what I expect to be many, many episodes of me watching Cardcaptors in a series that I am tentatively calling Defending Cardcaptors. I'm CCYamato, your host, and today's episode we're going to start with episode 1, A Fateful Day. Now, I didn't go over this in the video where I introduced this series. Cardcaptors, as I mentioned, had a lot of episodes out of order. And I'm not going to go in the Cardcaptors order. I'm going to go in the Cardcaptors Sakura order. And the reason for that is because while it is a fair criticism of the way Cardcaptors was handled to criticize the way episodes got shuffled around and the confusion that it can have for the story, for the most part, Cardcaptors Sakura doesn't really have to be watched in a specific order. So I ultimately don't think that's one of the main important things to consider when talking about the quality of Cardcaptors as a dub. The point of this series that I want to do is mainly look at the dubbing from a technical level in terms of just the episode itself. So, episode order aside, I'm not really going to give that much attention unless it specifically comes up, like it's actually going to come up in this one, because the first episode of Cardcaptor Sakura is episode 21 of Cardcaptors. So we're going to watch the first episode here, but just know that this episode was actually 21 when it was aired in North America. Now, how'd they pull that off? Because this is the episode that sets the foundation for the series. What they do is that they bookended the episode with pieces of another episode and made it a flashback. It was one of those like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm Sakura. How did I end up flying over a pit of sand? Well, it was one fateful day, which is, again, the name of the episode. Now, I don't know which version of this I have. I haven't watched any of these because I want to go into these completely blind, but since I had to assemble my collection of Cardcaptors from a bunch of different regions, like I had to get it from the Australian PAL region, I had to get it from VHSs from the North American release, I think I even had some from the UK release, that all edited their episodes a little differently. I don't know exactly which version I have, so I might have the episode that is bookended, like I said, or I might have a version that actually plays like it's actually Cardcaptor Sakura. So I guess we're just going to find out as we begin this long, long journey of going through Cardcaptors and trying to defend it. So here we go, episode 1 of Cardcaptors, A Fateful Day.
Under our sleep, Cardcaptors of the cloud expect the unexpected now.
So, I guess the first thing I should talk about is the theme song. I hate this song, but I also love this song. It's like, it's so nostalgic, but it's so oversaturated that I hate it. But it's making me feel nostalgic hearing it again. And I know the whole song, and I'm not going to sing it, but this is hurting me hearing it again. But I don't actually think it's a bad song. Like, it does the job of getting you ready to go for the series. It's actually like, it's really actiony. And that was the thing that Cardcaptors wanted to do. It wanted to make the show more actiony rather than like shoujo-ish. It didn't play it like, yeah. So we're actually starting this episode like it goes in Cardcaptor Sakura. So that means I have one of the PAL releases. So this episode is playing. We're not getting the bookended version where the sand card is. We're actually getting this. And I can already tell that the music's completely different. I think the entire series of Cardcaptors uses its own soundtrack. So this is completely different, but you can kind of hear that it takes inspiration from the original. Like, it's still got that nice, like, it's got that nice, like, string sound. Like, there's a harp sound. There's a little bit of piano in there. It's good. I like it. It's a good different thing. I don't know why they wouldn't use just the original soundtrack, but there you go. That's the way it is.
This was the day that changed my life. The day I discovered the Cloud Book. It started.
Okay, so she's narrating like this is a bookended episode. It like there's a change to the actual dialogue, so it kind of sounds like they didn't change it for an episode that wasn't bookended.
Walking normally.
I'm lucky. How many guys get a dinosaur for a little sister?
Stop calling me a dinosaur!
They cut a little bit out of that. They cut her stomping. And that scene makes no sense without her kind of monologuing about growing big and stomping him someday.
Think she'd be proud.
So I guess it's a good moment to talk about the fact that I think that the voice actress for Sakura, Carly McKillop, is the best English Sakura. Okay, there's only been like 3 of them, admittedly, but it's the best one. I can definitely take or leave Monica Rial, and I don't even know what the name of the girl who did it in the NIS version is, but yeah, Carly McKillop, definitely the best English Sakura.
Oh good, there's Tori. Tori, wait up.
Tori.
Hey, relax. What's the big hurry?
I guess it's a good thing they didn't name like Tony or something.
Nothing.
They changed the names of most of the characters. They couldn't change Sakura's name because her name is plastered in Romanji all over the place. So they had to leave that one. But everyone else, Julian, some of them are really dynamic changes, and some of them are like they're Toya to Tori, and then there's Yukito to Julian. And they removed the scene of her kicking him.
Sometimes I can't.
They're kind of cutting a lot of scenes here, and I think that's because, again, this episode was made to be
Always so nice.
bookended, and also you have to cut some out for American audiences because you have to add more commercials in there. So, I mean, they're probably hacking up little pieces everywhere.
So, have you come up with your independent study topic yet?
Okay, so they cut the scene where Tomoyo has her first
I'm going to make a
introduction, but
on the life of the fourth
that makes sense considering that this episode is, again, as I've said several times now, I should stop saying it, is that this episode was cut as a flashback. So I guess, yeah, it makes no sense to have her her intro scene in. Like, there's no point.
If you don't mind shooting a video of drill team practice.
So that's not the same song, but again, they definitely took a lot of the same direction. Like, the music direction is very similar to the original.
What's that noise?
So I'm kind of surprised, or I guess I give it credit that, like, they wrote all their own music,
Coming from Dad's
but they
library.
kind of kept the same
We're here.
they kept the same theme.
Burglar.
But that begs the question, you know, if you were just going to stay in the same genre, why write your own music to begin with? Might have been a licensing thing.
Take a look.
I don't know. It was the early 2000s, the late 90s era. All that dubbing, they basically redid everything except obviously the animation. All right, so here we go. We're gonna actually
Just happened.
gonna catch up to Matt Hill as Kiro, and I remember this voice being a little iffy, but hey, maybe it's not as bad as I remembered.
Heidi, Heidi, Heidi! Thank you so much for waking me up.
I don't hate it.
I have been stuffed in that book for like ever.
I mean, like, I don't know what the executive decision to make him like a surfer guy is, but I think Matt Hill is Australian, so maybe that's just natural state for him. I'm sorry for stereotyping all Australians.
Yeah, you got it, sister. You can call me Kiro. I keep the cloud cards from getting in.
Oh, he gives himself the nickname in this.
Whoa! No! My
So, Cardcaptors Kiro wants to be called Kiro.
precious God.
There, I'm all finished.
This is just an animation thing. I think she just walked through a chair.
Time to eat.
I'll read. Each cloud card has its own character and special.
Anyone who's been watching my videos for a long time knows that I say Clow Read, even though in Japanese it's probably meant to be Clo Read.
So,
Just like, you know, glow or blow, or in English it probably should be Clo Read, but
They sound
this series named it Clow Read, and I've always kind of stuck with that. This is the reason why I say Clow.
you're gonna help
It's also the reason why I say Kiro and not Karo.
because map.
for how long?
30 years or so. I never said being a guardian was easy.
Okay, they cut her face reaction there. It's like,
Seal, you must have been
you're hurting the quality of the scene by removing some of these.
Sakura.
okay,
Sakura.
Go stand over there.
Sakura. I think those are the two big ones. And I've now that I've studied Japanese, I don't say either of those.
Girl will carry out the sacred promise. Her name is Sakura.
See, yeah, Kiro gives her the Sakura sound. She says Sakura. I think most of the characters in the show say Sakura. With an American accent, it's easier to say Sakura rather than Sakura. Like, I always put the emphasis on the sa, even though it's in kanji it's all one character, so it's like each one should have their own emphasis.
Named Sakura. Cardcaptor.
Listen, I can't be a card captor.
Are you sure? And once you capture all the cards, you'll be a hero.
Yeah, well, I'm just a kid. I'm not old enough to capture the cards yet.
Yeah, well, you were old enough to let the cloud cards loose.
They'd still be in the book if you hadn't taken a 30-year nap.
These two have actually really good chemistry with each other. Like, their dialogue actually feels very natural, and like it's well adapted. Like, I think in general, I think Cardcaptors tried to give Sakura a little more bite and give her a slightly more tougher attitude. But yeah, these two actually get along really well. So they have the same good level of interaction.
Like what?
Get out there and capture that cloud card.
Okay, so they actually keep Fly's original sound. They don't record like a different Fly sound. Like, that's actually the same one from the original show.
O key of Cloud, power of magic, power of light. Surrender the wand, the force ignite. Release!
So that's an interesting change. In Japanese, the key conceals the power of darkness. But in Cardcaptors, it's the power of light. Which makes sense in the fact that it does turn into a ball of light when it releases, but I wonder if that was like a way to kind of tone down the idea of black magic and stuff. So it's like, no, it's not darkness and bad, it's made of light.
It's after us!
Sakura, call the windy card.
The whole spell is fine. It's just that is an interesting change, that they change it from the key that hides the power of darkness to the key that has the power of light.
But it's chasing us!
Super athletic moment. That's still like the most impressive physical thing she probably does in the entire franchise. Is just that crazy jump. Like, I'll try not to talk about the series in general too much and focus mostly on Cardcaptors, but every so often I'm just gonna talk about something that just blows my mind from the original series, because it is here. Oh, she doesn't say the thing. So in later episodes, or in a lot of episodes, when they release the card, she says release and dispel. She doesn't say it in this one, so I'm wondering why it's not here. Considering that this one is so late, like, you'd think that'd be a standard thing she'd say, so I don't know, it makes me wonder what order these episodes were produced in. I'm assuming that the dubs were produced in the order they aired, but
I command you to return to your power goodbye! Fly!
it's amazing how sometimes, yeah, the dialogue is completely one for one. Like, I was expecting, like, full dialogue rewrites, but yeah, sometimes they're just straight up the same lines.
So, how do you like flying?
It's the best!
I knew I could count on you, Cardcaptor Sakura.
Oh, now he said it. Roll credits. Oh, look at that. They actually, they translated these, the Kiro's Corners. So,
Cardcaptor fans, I'm everyone's favorite.
in the North American release, at the very least, they didn't do the Kiro's Corner things. What they would do at the end of the episodes is they'd do, they'd basically show a really quick clip show of scenes from an episode that they didn't dub. So it was basically the only way to see any part of the series that didn't make it to the North American dub. I'm assuming that when you watched this in like the UK or the Australian dub, or the Australian release, you actually got these Kiro Corners. So now I'm really confused, like, which version of this I have. Like, I mean, I guess, yeah, I have the PAL region, but yeah, I guess that's what I'm going. I don't know where I'm going with that one. So that was Cardcaptors Episode 1, A Fateful Day. So overall, I'm actually surprised to say that that is actually about as good as I remembered the series being. I might be a little nostalgia blind, but to be entirely honest, the voice acting is about where I remembered it being. Carly McKillop is still a really good English Sakura. The voices from other characters, Kiro was actually... I think I'm okay with hearing this. We'll see with some more episodes. We barely get any of Tomoyo Madison, but yeah, I already said my piece on her, and she is a much bigger character in the next episode, so I'll probably have plenty to say there. Tori and Julian, yeah, I'll talk about all the voices more as we go on. In general, I think because this episode was meant to be bookended by another episode, it's cut down more than maybe some other episodes are. So this episode does have a lot of little cuts throughout it. Just off the top of my head, I know that they cut a couple frames of animation from her, in the morning with her brother, with her stomping. They cut out her kicking Tori. They cut out Madison's first appearance. They just hack and slash a bunch of things. And I think that's just meant to make this episode fit into the time slot. And unfortunately, that does kind of hurt the pacing of the episode a little bit. But I also feel like you really wouldn't miss those frames if you didn't know they were there. I think maybe the worst one that feels really bad is like the scene in her bedroom where, she says like they wouldn't have gotten out if you'd taken a 30-year nap. And then, or no, it's where she says like, how long were you asleep? And he says 30 years. In the original, there's supposed to be a reaction shot of her like 30 years, and then Kiro comes back with his thing. And in this run, they just went, 30 years and then cut to Kiro's next reaction. So that hurts that scene. But in general, actually, I think this went off really well. The music is different. It's not the original soundtrack, but whoever wrote the soundtrack for Cardcaptors clearly listened to the soundtrack of the original and based the soundtrack off of the original series. There were a couple of songs in there that have like lyrics, and they're definitely like American poppy songs. So there's that. And we'll talk more about that as we hear them more. They weren't like awful, but they're probably not my cup of tea. But yeah, that's the first episode. Let me know what you think down below. Gonna keep doing this regardless, at least for a little while. Because I really do want to see more of the series. This is going to be a good nostalgia trip for me. But yeah, if you have any specific commentary from seeing my clips, go ahead and leave it down below. Do all the other YouTube stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.